Hello, everyone. This is now week 13 of the semester, and we're going to jump right into our lesson. Today we have quite a few things to cover, so this is probably going to be a longer video, unfortunately, but we'll be going over some new stuff in the drawing apart section of Inventor, and then we're also going to be going over some more features in the actual drawing portion where we make those detailed drawings. So we're going to start off with the part. And some of the things we're going to do today relate with patterns, along with some circular tools and stuff like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start a sketch on a plane. And you'll notice, as it loads, there we go. You'll notice that we do have these black lines that seem like axes, but they're not the actual axes. So if we go over to the model tree, and we have and look under origin, we hit the little plus sign next to it. We have a folder full of these planes and axes. So what we can do is we can click one of the axes, right click it, and click visibility. So now we have this yellow line, which is the axis. We can also do that with the other lines as well. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a circular feature. So essentially it's going to be like the hub of a wheel. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start drawing it real quick. And one of the neat things, if you're drawing a part that is going to be round and revolved around an axis, you can make it so that you only have to draw half of the part, which is nice. But now, what I'm going to end up doing here is I'm going to be drawing an extra line. So this is half of the part, so if you were to just take a section of it, it would be half. So I'm going to draw this extra line over here. And what we're going to do is we're going to select that line, and then we're going to go up to the very top here under Format, and there's one of these called Center Line. We're going to click that, and you'll notice that now that line looks like a center line. And what we're able to do is, instead of like dimensioning traditionally how we go from like here to here and do all that, we can do something called linear diameters. So linear diameter dimensioning will take, like, say this line and go to the center line, and now we have an actual diameter. So it's a lot easier to make these revolved parts. So I'm just going to go ahead and make these, size this all up, and again, we have that linear diameter there. It makes it significantly easier to do these parts. Now, not all dimensions we're going to be doing are going to be able to be linear diameters, but quite a few of them will be. Like these two right here, this will not be a linear diameter because it's the thickness of a part, not a diameter when it's revolved. I'm just going to go ahead and finish up dimensioning. Okay, we are about done there. Okay, doesn't want that. And I think that's about all I'm going to do for this. I don't really need a lot for what I'm trying to do. So now that we've done these linear diameters, it makes it a lot easier to revolve this part. So what we're going to do now is, sorry, I have a big list of things I got to go through, so I'm crossing them off as I go. So now what we're going to do is we're going to hit Finish Sketch. And now we can revolve this object. Okay, now see what happened here is now we have our revolved object like we wanted. You'll see that it automatically picked this axis to revolve around and this profile. So if we were to do this manually, we'd select the profile, and then we'd select the axes, which we could either do the actual axes that we selected or that we made visible, or we could select the center line. It doesn't really matter which. It's going to give us the same thing. And then you'll notice that it says full or 2, but in this case, if I wanted to change the degrees, say I only wanted half of this, I could rotate half of it. You can do partial rotations. You don't have to do full rotations. But for most things, you're going to want to do a full rotation. So now that that's done, I'm going to get rid of these X and Y axes real quick. Actually, I'm going to keep the Y axes. You'll see here in a minute. Now, one of the other things we can do with this axis is we can make other planes. So you'll notice that we have, if we made these visible, we have these other datum planes. But now we don't have to stick with just those. A lot of times you're going to need to make other ones. So we have this whole list of different planes that we can go off of. One of the ones I'm going to use right now is the offset from plane. I'm not actually going to use this in the drawing, but just showing how it is. So once you select the tool, you select a face, and then are presented with a dimension, or you can drag the arrow. So if you drag the arrow that way, it goes negative dimension because that was where it defined negative from. It defines negative the opposite way the face is facing, if that makes sense. And then this is positive. So in this case, I'm just going to make it back in a little bit and just negative 0.25. Okay, not actually going to use that plane, but that's how you use one of them. Now I'm going to do plane, angle to plane around edge. So now you select a plane. Oh, not that plane. Sometimes it likes to auto-select things. So I want this, and then I find an edge, and now I can select an angle. It's a little easier to see from the top. Now it's already auto-set at 90 degrees, but maybe I want a 45-degree angle. Now you'll see the plane, if we look from the very, very top, this plane is now at a 45. So I'm going to click OK. So now I have a plane at a 45-degree angle. And these planes you can actually start sketches on. So I'm actually going to start a sketch on this one. And don't forget, you are able to project edges onto your sketch plane. Now you'll notice that it's just highlighting these edges yellow. But if you actually move it and see, it's projecting those edges onto the new surface. But in this case, I'm not really doing anything fancy. I'm just going to take away this material that happens to be jutting out past this. So what we're going to do is we're just going to hit extrude. Now that we've projected all that, and I'm just going to select everything here. Okay, and we're going to hit cut instead. And then the other way and through all. And now I have that small little flat cut off of. Now what we can do as well, you don't always have to have these planes on. You can right click them and make them invisible. I'm going to do that now because I don't need either of them. What we can do is, actually I want one of these planes still active, and that is the XY plane, one of our datums. We have a couple different tools for doing mirroring different things. So we don't have to if we have a pattern, we don't have to keep messing with it and make it over and over and over. We have tools for that. One of those tools is the mirror tool. So mirror tool, you can either select a feature, feature, or an entire body. In this case, I'm going to select a feature, and that was that extrusion here. And now once you select it, you can select the mirror plane next. And I want this one. And you'll notice that it has a little green line there where that feature is mirrored to. And then we hit OK. And now it's cut off on both sides. Now I have this spike looking thing. Okay. So I'm going to get rid of the XY plane and the other axes now. So that was just one of the pattern tools. And you can see the pattern tools are up here under the pattern. So we can also make circular patterns. So if I start to sketch on here and say I want to make some bolt holes for this hub, we're going to project our geometry like we've been doing. And then I can either draw the entire pattern right now, or I can just draw one hole. I'm going to show you both ways. So right now I'm just going to dimension it real quick. We're just going to say it's a 3/16 hole, and it is 1/2 inch above center. Okay. Now what we're going to do, one more thing I did forget to mention earlier, is we don't always have to make center lines. We can also make construction lines. Now construction lines are very helpful because say I drew this line to make sure that the circle stayed straight, vertical. Now you can see that the circle is purple, so it's fully dimensioned and constrained. if I were to extrude this now, this line would become an issue because it's going to be like, hey, what's this line doing here? We don't really need it. It'll still work with it there, but if we don't need it, if we don't want to have it considered for extrusion, we can select it and then change it to a construction line so it makes it look like it's hidden, a hidden line essentially. And this line will never be considered for a sketch. So if you were to make an odd profile and you used a bunch of construction lines to help position different features, and you'd happen to extrude it, these hidden lines, or sorry, construction lines, will not be considered whatsoever in the actual sketch. So now I'm going to hit Finish Sketch, and we're going to extrude. So right now I'm doing the feature with just a single hole, and then doing a circular pattern for the feature instead of a sketch. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the feature. So you can either select it through the model tree, or you can try to select it on the part. Often the model tree is a little easier because it's a lot more controlled. Here you're just kind of hoping to click the right thing. Now we come to the rotation axis. Now it can get a little tricky, but since this part is cylindrical for the most part, we can just select any cylindrical surface that we want to that has the same center as we want to revolve around. Otherwise, you can make a separate sketch and then draw a line to be used as the rotation axis. But in this case, I'm just going to select this axle. And then we have our pattern. So if I click OK, we have the holes. Now, if we want to go back and edit this, I don't need to have 6 holes. Maybe I only want 4. But if you look over here in the placement, you can change that. If I want 4, it has 4. If I want 20, it has 20. It's going to look a little odd if it's 20, but you get the point. So we're just going to stick with 6 though. And now you also notice there's a degrees at the bottom. Most of the time you're going to be using 360 degrees, but what if I wanted 6 holes within 180 degrees? Now I have my 6 holes within 180 degrees. But we're going to switch back to 360 and call it a day. So that's one way to do it. But if I didn't want to do it that way, say I just wanted to stick with my sketch, go back in and edit this, I can also do a circular pattern with the sketch. So if I hit circular up here underneath pattern, select the geometry, and then the rotation point, in this case it's a point, I can now do the same exact thing. If I click OK, now I have this. Now with this one, it doesn't give you a preview, which is not as helpful, but it's rather easy to go back and edit. So now we have the same pattern. If we hit Finish Sketch and hit Extrude, we can click all these individually and have the same effect. I prefer to make a single hole and then use the circular pattern, but it depends on how your assignment dictates. Sometimes it's better to do one way versus the other. So now we have those bolt holes in our hub. Okay, so let me go back and check off a couple things on my list. And there's quite a few things. Okay, I think we have covered everything for the drawing part. So now what we're going to do is we're just going to go ahead and just save this as a random name, just kind of week 13 we'll say. And now we're going to go back to our home and we're going to start a new drawing. Let it load. So we're going to go back and we're going to leave the sheet size as is. Might bump it down a size. We'll see when we get the base in there. But we're going to go over up to the very top again. We're going to hit base. And then you'll see that it already pre-selected one of our parts because it's already open. We're going to go ahead and place our front, top, and side views. And then we're also going to make our isometric. Okay? So we're going to click OK. Now this drawing the page is rather big for the part we have. So we're just going to go ahead and change the sheet size. So if we go over to sheet, right click, we can go ahead and hit edit sheet. And then change the size from D to, let's say B. We'll see what B looks like. B looks a little more reasonable. We are going to be fitting some extra views in here, so it's nice to have a little extra space. So one of the other views we're going to be going over is called section views. So a section view is where you take a slice of the drawing and literally cut it and look inside of it. So in this case, I want to take a section view. We don't necessarily need it for this part, but we're just going to go ahead and do it anyway. I want a section view of this profile right here. Okay, so we're going to go into the place views and we're going to click section. We're going to go ahead and we have to select a view first, so go ahead and select one of them. And then you'll notice I can start selecting points. So you got to be careful with this. So if I were to select a point here and then like a point here, and then click continue, right click and hit continue, you'll notice that I only get the section view of part of the part that I was looking at. But if I go back, I should be able to go back and drag. It's not letting me drag right now. It's very odd. But you'll notice it only gives me part of it. So if I just get rid of it, just get rid of this view, delete it, and redo it, I typically like to go out a little above the edges, but you can do it right to the edge, it's not a problem. But now we have the entire section view, and you can see the part where it has these cross lines, it's called cross hatching, that is where we actually cut through material. So if we were actually putting this part through like a bandsaw or something, these sections are the places where we would have it cut. Okay? One of the other views we have is called an auxiliary view. So what an auxiliary view is, we have, we're going to look at the top view of this one. We're not going to make the view from this, but we're going to look at it. An auxiliary view takes an angled face that you see only as an angled face from your primary views, so your top, front, and side views. So this face right here that is on that point, we never truly see what that face looks like. We only see it from front, top, and side. So we're in all of our views, we're never looking at it straight on. So you always got to remember how auxiliary view works. It's a little different than the rest. So I believe I have to go through here. Yes, that's how we do it. So I'm going to go ahead and redo that for you. So we're going to go up and click auxiliary. And now we're going to click where we are looking at the very side of the face. So we don't see any of the face at all. It's just that edge. So we look at this edge. So we wouldn't select this. We would select this. So we're going to again select that view just like we did with section. And we're going to select the line that it happens on. Okay? And then we click on it and drag it away. And now this is the face. This is the view we're actually looking at. So this is looking at that cut edge straight on. Okay? So one of the other things we have to offer with this is, I did mention this last week, but we can do center lines and hidden lines. In this case, center lines are going to be much, much more prevalent because there's a lot of parts. So we're going to first start off with our center marks. So we're just going to click the center mark tool up here in the middle, and then we're going to start clicking on circles. Pretty easy as that. And that's it for that one, and really there's no other ones around here. I mean, you could do it on this view, but it's kind of redundant. Just kind of makes it look messy. So once we're done with that, we also have these actual center lines. And again, like I mentioned last week, there's a couple ways to do it. So if we take the regular center line and find a point, we click on the center two parts and then right click and click create. So I clicked on the points on the far edges where I want the center line to go through, the center points. And then I clicked from point to point and right clicked and hit create to make that center mark. Now, if I didn't want it to do it that way, which I often don't, I use the center line bisector. So for the center line bisector, you select two edges and it creates finds a middle line and creates that center line. The only problem with it is for this part, I only select that line and the bottom line. I couldn't really select all through, so it only created it so far. But in this case, I can just kind of drag through and it looks good. They don't have to be perfect by any means. So that was center lines. One of the other things we can do is retrieve dimensions from the sketch like I mentioned last week. So we're going to go up right next to where we find our center lines and center marks and click Retrieve Model Dimensions or Annotations. We're going to select a feature, so we're going to stick with this face. We're going to click it, and we're going to hit Apply or OK. It doesn't really matter. If you hit Apply, that means we can go over to a different view and keep going, and you hit Apply, and you just keep going. Didn't select that one. But we're just going to hit OK. But now we have all these dimensions. So we're just going to kind of move these dimensions. Sometimes you got to play with them to move them around a little bit. But you can see they're pretty piled in here, and that's not what we want by any means. So we're just going to keep dragging them away. Typically, you should not have any dimensions in the part itself. They should all be outside of the part. But we're just going to keep going like this. And now you'll notice I made this hole right here 0.1875, and it's only showing me 2 digits, just like everything else here. What we can do is we can right click on this and get different precision. So what we can do is we can change the amount of digits we need. So in this case, I want my full 4 digits. So all I did was I right clicked on it and hit precision, and then I have all these different options. So if I hit 6, I want 6 digits, it's going to throw on some trailing zeros because I asked for 6. But say I want to change that to 1 precision, it's going to give me 0.2 because 0.1875 rounds to 0.2 if you want it to 1 digit. But we'll stick with, we can do 3 digits as well, and again, it rounds it. Typically 3 digits is good, depends on the part you're making, but we'll stick with 4 digits for this one, just so we know the actual size. That's pretty much it for that. I have one more thing to remind you all about, and we can actually, before I do that, you can, as you drag these parts around, they'll also move with the other views. So if I drag the front view up, it's going to drag everything around it. So you can play around with them to get them to where you want. Get a nice even space of them. But the thing I was going to show you is modifying this title block down here. So if we go to the model tree and look at week 13, if we right click it, click iProperties, this is where we can change, not in general, but go to summary. This is where we can change the information. So in this case, for the title of the drawing here, I'm just going to draw, say, week 13 tutorial or lesson, what's it called, lesson. And then for the author, that would be my name, but in this case, it'd be your name. And then we're just going to write in the company, so Penn State Behrend. And that is really all that will show up on this title block specifically, and we're going to hit OK. And now it populated all that with the information. Again, you'll notice that besides my name, the company, quote unquote, and the title, we also have the date. So I made this video on a Wednesday, so the day of lecture. So there's the date. We have the size of the sheet. So this is a B size sheet. We also have the scale and how many sheets there are. So now if I were to go to the side here and right click and create a new sheet and went back to the old one, and now says sheet 1 of 2. That's not really that important. So we're just going to get rid of the second sheet. We don't really want it. And that is the lesson. So I've noticed that you all have gotten much better with the submissions on Canvas. I'm very pleased with that. We still have a few people that are submitting screen captures when they should be printouts and vice versa. But it's definitely become less of a problem now. So it's definitely looking a lot better. You guys are doing good work. I'm not seeing a lot of problems with the actual Inventor files themselves. So keep up the good work. And if you have any questions, please email me. All right. Have a nice day.